Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Grow Up, Level Up, the podcast where we talk about the fun and games that help us grow up and the fun and games that we choose to partake in today as adults. My name is Samson. Welcome to the show in the year 2024. In today's episode, we're going to talk to Arseny Lebedev, the co-founder and CEO of Original Games, about their gaming journey, their learnings as a leader, and most importantly, how they supported teams during world events such as COVID and the conflict in Eastern Europe. So I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion today. Arseny, welcome to the show.
Nice to have. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. In 60 seconds or less, can you maybe introduce yourself and your claim to fame?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to do in 60 seconds. The point is I've been an entrepreneur and a founder for my entire career. I really love games. And I think games can be tied into, kind of everything. Just very quickly about my career. So I started an agency basically right out of college. It means that we did contract work for big game publishers. Our first client was Zynga, which is a big mobile, used to be social game and now mobile game publisher. Now they're part of Take-Two. So I did that for a while. I worked in corporate. I sold that business to a big enterprise level kind of publicly traded company. And after that, I went to Machine Zone. It was an early gaming unicorn focusing on mid-core games. I really learned a lot there. In my last company, Original Games, we do mobile puzzle games. This is our fourth year or something. And, we're making double-digit millions in revenue and hoping to continue growing this year.
That's awesome. Congratulations on the success so far. That's really exciting.
Thank you.
Before we dive deep into your journey and you yourself as Arseny, I have a little bit of housekeeping to give to our audience. Make sure to stay informed by following all our socials. That's at Grow Up Level Up on Instagram, X, and LinkedIn, as well as Threads. Trying to get that going again, and TikTok. So pretty much everything at Grow Up Level Up, as well as my personal one at Samson XP. After this episode, if you liked what you heard, check out our other episodes, Grow Up Level Up, on YouTube, as well as our other shows, Yugulu and Cheers Love. Definitely check those shows out. A kind of big announcement on our end on the show for 2024. We will be moving away from weekly episodes and kind of focus more on as they're ready, they'll come out type of interviews. That gives me more time to make sure the interviews and guests and podcasts and production are as best as they could be for you, the audience. So we're moving away from weekly episodes. There will be episodes a little more sporadic throughout the year, and I'm really looking forward for you to check that out. So moving back to our interview with Arseny, who is the co-founder and CEO of Original Games, I have to ask this question to all of our guests. What are you drinking today on the podcast?
So I'm going to fake this because I already drank it. So I'm a big fan of yerba mate. It's a South American tea. Gets you really energized, and you drink it through this. You drink it out of this kind of it's a gourd, but for some reason it's this is like a vegetable. It's like a squash. It's like a squash.
Interesting.
But it has like and I don't want to dip my fingers in, but it has like an organic inside. It's not like you're drinking out of like a metal cup or something. It's just somehow different. And then you drink it out of this kind of straw.
Okay. Yeah, for our audio listeners, Arseny held up like a brown,
it's like a
hourglass-looking cup. Yeah, like a bowl, like almost like a coconut with an opening, and then the straw is also metal with a spoon out coming out.
It's covered in leather, but there's like a squash inside, basically, like a hard squash.
Oh wow! Wait, so that cup is reusable? Like the squash, that cup wasn't made just for this drink.
So and I found that if you have a cup that has a little stand, it's a little bit easier that you don't knock it over and spill this like very there's a lot of tea leaves inside. So anyway, but I'm a big fan of yerba mate. It's a great alternative to coffee, and it gets you really zinged up, but you can't drink it after 4. You won't sleep. It's good stuff.
I definitely have to try that. It's from South America, take a look. You said?
Yeah, it's an acquired taste.
I drink a black coffee. I like my beers strong. So I'm looking forward to trying it out one day.
Take a look.
Cool. Yeah. For me, myself, if we didn't mention this earlier, we're actually recording this. This might be our first international episode of Grow Up Level Up, because you're based out of Portugal right now, and I'm
in Portugal
out here in Vancouver. So it's kind of afternoon for you, morning for me. So I'm having a black coffee just to perk myself up, I guess. I don't have as interesting of a cup. It's like a Captain America cup. Awesome. So my second question that I love to ask all my guests is, what are your top 3 games of all time?
So, and of course, this is like the impossible question for someone that plays games, forever. So, and I was very selective. So, I think the number one game is Apples to Apples, which is
interesting.
It's a board game. It's a board game where you focus more on your relationship to the other players, and that's kind of how you win. Well, anyway, I don't want to go into the details, but Apples to Apples is one of the best games ever. It's probably like one of the fundamental games. And then I would also say Doom, the original Doom, and Roblox. I think
Roblox.
Not that I'm like a 17-year-old, but it's incredible, the success that it's had, and kind of how they. I mean, it's basically, we can talk about this more, but in my opinion, it's like the Doom of this generation is Roblox.
The Doom of this generation. Doom as in like the game Doom, not not the end of the world Doom.
The pending end of the world, yeah. That's another one. No, but Doom defined kind of my generation.
Okay.
And I mean, it was the game that everyone kind of grew up on and took very seriously. And, and Quake and Half-Life and kind of all of that. But I think it really came from Doom. And there'll be arguments about whether it was the first 3D game. The probably technical answer is no, but it's like the impact it's had. I mean, I was just playing Doom on Friday.
It's like the original one from way back.
Yeah,
then.
I mean, it's heavily modded nowadays. So, but it's it's still. I think if we were to have this conversation in 10 years, someone would still be playing Roblox, or in 20 years. They would say Roblox. I just played Roblox today, like that kind of thing.
That's awesome. I mean, backtracking a little bit, actually, I want to bring up Apples to Apples again. I think that is a really great game as well. It works for every age group. I've played it a lot when I worked at summer camps. It's such a great time killer that can last as long as short as you want. And yeah, it's totally about the relationship with the other player. And I'm sure we'll dive into that a little further. But Roblox is also a really great answer, because I've personally never got too deep into it. But when I worked in some middle school classrooms, it was like the game. Like the kids are hopping on Discord after class to play Roblox with each other, and yeah, and I learned this from them, that Roblox is not just one game; it's any game that you want, and that's kind of the hook of it. So that's really interesting that it is the game of the generation. What's your opinion, real quick, between Roblox and Fortnite? Because I think Fortnite's also going for something similar, where they're trying to be the every game or the hub.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I love, Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox. They're all trying to do the right thing. And I just think I think the reason Roblox is ahead is because it looks like a total piece of shit. It has incredible discovery despite that. And you have kids buying these like just horrible visual stuff. Like you have a block character. And I just feel like the impact of that kind of is the thing that got through. That's what makes it a bit superior. The constant criticism is that your player base is going to outgrow the product. I don't agree with that. I think it's like Doom. I'm still playing Doom. It's still my thing. Like, unfortunately, they can't make incremental revenue from me. But I think if Roblox is your like generational game, you're going to keep going. And the experience will naturally tune. And I'm not like a big fan. Like I don't play this a lot. But sometimes you always get surprised. And it is scary being almost 40 and going into those games and talking to the kids playing.
Right,
Um,
right. Cool. No, that's great insight. Yeah, it's the business side, scaling and monetizing to keep your game going is a totally different conversation. But I mean, if the base product is something that already has a hook and people are already there for, like those are other problems. It's already an incredible feat on its own to have that kind of hook for a game. Just a quick aside for our audience: if you hear some funny noises on your end, that's on us. We got some construction going on in the back, so don't
construction
worry
going
about
on.
that. Let's move into our questions for you as a game dev. You've had a long career going from straight out of college. Now you're the CEO of your own company. But I want to ask, like, what are some of the games that you've worked on?
I mean, so the backup is kind of the context is that I work on casual games. And when we were doing agency work, we worked on a lot of games from big publishers like Disney, Activision. I mentioned Zynga, all those guys, and like some of those games people have played. The game that we're working on at Original Games is Emerge In and Merge Them, and they're really cool puzzle games. You guys should check them out. And I can't go. I feel like all those NDAs have expired, but it's not cool to mention specifically the big hits that we did. But I remember there was a couple games that have huge IP that we did all the artwork for and stuff like that back in the day.
Wow, nice, cool. Okay, so you've worked on mostly casual games. What's your definition of casual games?
Right. Then this is kind of what I wanted to get into. This is, I think it's what inspired me to go into games, because like for me, I'm really deep into games and kind of interactive art, but not everyone is like even considers that an art form or whatever that and I love the idea that you can still kind of inspire and touch folks that aren't that don't consider Candy Crush as a game. So my first job, I was an intern at a company that made casual games, and it's like card games, very simple matching, stuff like that, stuff that we do now. They're easy to pick up, and you don't need to invest a lot of your mind into playing, but you can play for years. So yeah, I think that's the easy definition of a casual game, a game that has a very short learning curve.
Oh, okay, cool. That's really great insight, because I think like the for me, when I hear casual, I'm also at odds with this definition. When you hear casual, it's like, yes, easy to learn, only takes up maybe like 5-10 minutes of your day. But then for like my mom, who plays Candy Crush like an hour or two every night while watching TV dramas, like that's pretty hardcore. Like you're playing a game an hour or two every night. So that's always been a definition I've been interested in. But easy to learn. It's
about also your investment. Like, I mean, it's about, for me, it's about how much of your mind you're invested into. So yeah, there's people that dream in Tetris when Tetris first came out, and there's people that dream in Bejeweled. But I think it's like you can't cut someone off of World of Warcraft if they're heavily invested, but you can cut a casual player off from Candy Crush if they're heavily invested. They can just jump back in much later. But like an MMO or something. I think that's kind of the definition. And in the game space, there's tons of these genres. We could talk all about them at a separate topic.
Yeah. We'll definitely come back to this because it's definitely very interesting. I also remember dreaming in Hearthstone when that first came out, calculating lethal in my dreams. So I want to go back to your career real quick. You briefly went over your career history at the beginning of the episode, but even before that, I want to ask, like, what made you want to work in video games?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I was just always into games. That's the easy answer. No, but when I was at Large Animal, and it's my first kind of job where it was like a job, and I told myself, like, there's a couple points that if I kind of check them all off, then this is kind of what I probably should do, even though this is like weird card games, or like we had like pinball games, but it was more about, I like doing cool things. I like technology, and I love the people that work in games.
Okay. Cool. So it was the whole like it was an amalgamation of a couple things. It wasn't like one event that really made you like love
Well,
this
yeah,
art form, I guess.
we could point to, so one of the things that kind of, and we try to do this at Original too, is like, if you're accepted so there's a rule at the company, if you're accepted to speak at like some event, the company would just cover like airfare or whatever. So I'm like, oh, I need a free airfare. Ooh. So
Travel for free.
yeah, I went, I applied to some well, not some, Casual Connect, which one of the biggest kind of conferences for games, for casual games. Well, it was Facebook games at the time, social games. And I got accepted, and I was like, oh my God, if these guys are willing to give me a chance and kind of, trust me, and I can succeed, then yeah. So I had a good time. I was very nervous, and it was my first time, and I was like presenting on stage with all these like people that knew shit. I was just starting. But I thought it was like a welcoming group. And before I was in games, when I was in college and high school, I was always hanging out with these, like, computer hackers and these technology people. And it's a very similar group where it's like people are just interested in cool stuff.
Cool. So like that conference made you feel like I'm with my people.
These are my people. Yeah, I want to, I would. This is just what I want to do. I feel very comfortable here, and I still feel that way. And there's a conference coming up in 3 weeks. That we're going to see each other again. Everyone's going to hang out. It's going to be good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Favorite project you've worked on as a game developer?
Yeah, so I think I always go back to this one. When I was just starting, I'm a big fan of old adventure games, and those are kind of, sometimes they call them point and click adventures. That's one of my kind of top. I play those a lot. I probably played all of them. So I had an opportunity to work on a remake of an old game called The Sins of the Fathers. It's here online, awesome game. So I worked on the remake, and I had the privilege of working with the original team, like the team that made the first game. So you're kind of like meeting your heroes, and it was I learned so much very, very quickly. Tons of mistakes, but you can play the game now. It's called Gabriel Knight 20th Anniversary. You can
Gabriel Knight
iPad. Yeah.
On iPad. Oh wow.
It's on iPad, on PC, on everything. Yeah. It was one of them. It was Unity based and all that, and we worked with Activision. My name's in the credits. So that was probably overall the best. I mean, of course, the best game now is Merge In. It makes millions of dollars every month. Like, incredible, right? Yeah. But I think that had the biggest kind of effect on my career so far.
Yeah, I think like even as an individual growing up playing something and then meeting your heroes essentially, and it being a great experience is definitely something to be celebrated. What do you like about that kind of game, if we can dive into that real quick?
Yeah. So there's these two camps, and you told me I could go deep on games. So there's two camps on this, right? It's like some people like linear games, and some people like non-linear games. Or they, I have a friend, incidentally, who works at Lariat in Baldur's Gate 3, and he's like, I don't play linear games. And I'm like, okay, well, the thing is, like, well, I like stories, and I think that games are a great way to tell stories. So those games are all about just solving logical puzzles, talking to people, and like some kind of adventure or some kind of story. So that's what really gets in. That's one of my favorite genres because of that.
So linear versus non-linear. So like linear as in, let's say God of War, like you're playing through a story and everyone gets the same ending. Maybe there's little divergent paths, like, I choose the axe more, I use the blades more, but everyone gets the same story. And then non-linear, kind of joked about this because Baldur's Gate 3 is I don't know where that falls in actually, because
I
it's
think
linear where it's a story, but there's so many branching paths and stuff.
Yeah, it's extremely incredible. It's like there's so many options for everything, and it's like I was telling myself like, so Starfield, the Bethesda game came out, and Baldur's Gate were sort of out at the same time. So, and I'm like preferring Starfield because it's just so stupid. Like I don't have to remember anything. I just go in here. They're like, go do this, okay. But on Baldur's Gate, it's like I have to remember what happened in the past to like kind of make the right decision. Which is, of course, I think the better experience if you have to kind of use your head a little bit. It's just so hard to do a good story with a non-linear path. That's truly will kind of change. And it doesn't feel like a dialogue tree of just like, if you do this, you go this, and but you still kind of end up at the end. So I really prefer linear stuff, and kind of a lot of my favorite games are just telling it. So the focus is more about telling an interesting story in a cool way, instead of like, well, what happens if you're at war and you use like this special weapon that's against your religion or whatever, and it's like,
yeah.
Well, that is very interesting, but maybe it's not my cup.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. I mean, that's a pretty cool way to put those two, because there's also like for me, I really like a lot of competitive shooters on PC. So that's a whole different camp, but I would consider that not non-linear, since it's like not everyone gets the same ending. If somebody wins, loses, and your experience
sometimes there's no ending.
Yeah. So that is very interesting. So I guess we kind of buried the lead here, but I want to also ask you, like, how have games impacted your life and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, well, they've impacted my life because my life is built around games. But I think like it also helps you think a certain way, and in business sometimes you have to make decisions that don't necessarily align with like your ethical beliefs and things like that. And I don't know, like I was thinking about how to answer this question, right? Because my whole career is about games, but it's like games are just a set of rules, and if you follow the rules, you win. If you don't follow the rules, you lose. And maybe that's an easy way of looking at life.
The game of life.
I think there's also this interesting puzzle that I sometimes use in interviews. I think there's only two types of games. So there's like chat rooms and slot machines. So slot machines are fully random number generation, and chat rooms have a social element instead of a random number generator. And that's like so if you look at poker, like poker is much more of a chat room than, but it has a random number element. And the slot machine is like just fully just this computer that poker has that. So apples to apples is a chat room. And then if you look at even Roblox, that might be a chat room.
Mm-hmm. What's a good example of a slot machine then?
Any mobile game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we people have this need to solve. Like, I need to solve this pattern, but you can't solve a pattern if it's random. So we're so motivated to keep going. Like, okay, did I get it this time? Did I guess the pattern this time? And that creates like something exciting. And like you said, you like competitive shooters. Well, that's like, there is a huge random, huge element of randomness there, but there is a bit of a social. I think it's more about random. And it's like your skill defines how good you are at approximating the results of this random number.
Yeah. Well, I kind of see how it can operate on like a spectrum, like chat rooms.
It's definitely a spectrum.
Yeah. Purely chat room, apples to apples. Slot machines is like the mobilest mobile game, like those idle gacha games. And then, everything falls in between. I totally resonate with that because, going back to the competitive shooter example, the slot machine part would be like, oh, are my teammates good or bad? How good or bad are my enemies? As well as like, how am I feeling today? That's kind of the randomness. And then chat rooms, purely social, would be something like Fortnite even. Like, we're just hopping in, chatting with our buddies. We don't care if we get the win or not. We're just here to hang out. So I can see that.
I think Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely there. I mean, I think the other thing I want to touch on is like, um, so like movies are also, storytelling mediums, or mediums that, or novels, are mediums of telling a story, or just transmitting something entertaining. But games, because of the element of interaction, you can actually form memories. And this isn't like some scientific thing. I just thought about this in the shower recently. It's like you can remember an experience you had in some game, and you might even dream about it. Versus a movie, you're going to remember the frame. And I think that's what makes games so interesting. And it's like, it's an interactive experience. It's an interactive piece of art that's sometimes entertaining and sometimes very emotional.
Yeah, that's a really great point that I always think about as well. Is movies are very passive storytelling medium, whereas games are an active storytelling medium, in that you can make your own experiences, and everybody, even though they experience the same game, like their result is different. Going back one step, I want to add one more point to the slot machines. I always considered those like dopamine generators, or the Skinner boxes, and I guess all games play with that Skinner box kind of concept. But basically, you do a thing and you get a little seed, and then as you scale and grow, getting the seed gets harder and harder and more complicated, but you're still motivated because you're reminded of how easy it was to get the seed in the beginning, which is something that comes up in a lot of games, especially those mobile games. Awesome. So, growing up, you kind of talked about one of your favorite games of all time being Gabriel Knight. Is that actually your greatest game of all time, or is it Roblox, or is it something else?
No, I mean, dude, it's hard to. It's of course hard to pin it on something, and I think there's, I have a huge list, but it's like, I think Doom is just really, and I'm not even that good at first person shooters, but I think Doom is such a big impact on me, because it's like, it keeps changing, just like life. Life is, life goes and goes, and Doom keeps changing, and there's new, like, cooler and cooler mods coming out all the time, and subversive things. And I was just this ridiculous super racist mod, and it's like, you're playing this and you're like, is this supposed to be art? Is this just some like asshole? So I don't know, man. It's like, it's such a, and it, it's, the game is 20 years old. There's a lot of those. But so it's like, for me, it's like those old school first person shooters that have been modified to so like Counter-Strike, it came from Half-Life. A lot of these things came out of other games. I think that's so powerful. It's not derivative. It's just a clone. It's like you use the same tools to build something that the original creators never really even thought about. And then I love those adventure games from LucasArts or Sierra Online. I grew up with them. And if you see the modern just more recent 8-bit, 16-bit looking games, they don't have the same heart that those older games had, and that's really cool. But there's, just like, as your career advances, and just like as you advance as a human, there are modifications and changes to having those same elements where, like, okay, there's a little character and you walk around and pick up things and use them to solve. So one of this, I always go back to, so there's a French company called Don't Nod, and they have a series of games called Life is Strange. And I remember I first saw the first Life is Strange at E3 a long time ago. And I'm like, I saw a demo and I'm like, I can't play this game here. This is not the right environment. You're in a really crowded conference hall. Not the right environment to play this game. And fast forward, I think 15 years or something, or 10 years. And a long time, maybe that long. And I finally picked it up and played it all the way through, and I was just blown away. Incredible storytelling, beautiful art direction, all that. Then there was a second game I really loved it, and I don't think it was as commercially successful as the first game, but I thought it was so good. And I always, I always pay attention to like when there's something in the game that was super expensive to do and it could have not done it. But it just like, I think a more popular example is in the first Last of Us, there's a part where at the end of an area, there's like all these zoo animals.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, they could have just made that door just a door. But instead there was like these giraffes and all this shit. And it's like, oh my God, like that's like a $200K, like full frame, whatever going on here. Yeah. So I really love that. And I think that's what kind of, a lot of stuff stands out because of that. And, unfortunately, usually those kinds of things are just because they have extra time. There isn't some horrible deadline. But again, it's like the evolution of adventure games and the evolution of old first-person shooters is just something really to look at. It goes and goes. And I think the last one I wanted to mention is Subnautica. It's a underwater exploration game. But if for the audience that likes those kinds of games, it's like, and you haven't played this is the number one
game
because there's no manual, like there's no instruction. It's just like you have crash landed on an underwater planet, go.
Yeah.
Awesome. And it's speaking of linear and non-linear storytelling, that's an incredible example where like there's very little guidance on what you're supposed to do. And there's no map, and you're just on the water, floating around. There's no map, so I drew a map, and cool. I still would always get lost. But there's entire parts of the game that you can skip if you just don't follow like that story path.
Right.
So
yeah, we touched on a couple things there. One is like the technology side and how that melds into the storytelling that is in not first-person shooters, but adventure games and games in general. There's also the linear and non-linear storytelling where, because of games, we can all go into different directions, and that creates a story through a non-linear way. And it's kind of tricky to sum up, but yeah, I think overall, like, games, because of their freedom and their player agency, creates this ability to have these very unique experience person per person. We could both say we played Subnautica, but your experience with it is vastly different than my experience. Same goes for like Baldur's Gate and Doom and all that.
Exactly,
yeah. I kind of want to move on to something a little more serious. So talking about you as a leader and as a CEO, in February 2022, there was a conflict in Eastern Europe that started, where basically before you were based in Russia, and then you had to move or do something because of this conflict. What did you end up doing for your team?
Right. So around the time, the issue we have like I guess at the time we had like 30-ish staff. And the problem was okay, maybe back up a second. So like, how do I lead? Like, what's my, so I'm very operationally hands-on. And of course I step back when I need to, which is very often. But I think the role of kind of like the beneficiary, the top, is just take on risk, take on those questions that the others can't really answer, take on that risk. And most of the time, those strategic decisions carry with them a lot of unknowns. And I think kind of the role of the leader is to, demystify that or understand the risk of unknown. So when this conflict was happening, everything was unknown. Like, can we bank tomorrow? Like, can our banks work tomorrow? That was a question that suddenly became an issue. Can I transfer money? Like that's very important for business. So that was escalating. And I remember, thankfully, our investors, we had a call, and he's like, you got to wake up, and you got to do something, because this can get out of hand very quickly. So, and I like living in Russia. I love to go back as soon as I can. It was a good life, and I'm not political anyway, but it was just, I find that people's hearts there fit my heart. In any case, so yeah, we very quickly, within a few months, just looked at all the options, and we picked Portugal as the location to kind of rebuild the company. So yeah, and we spent about a year moving, over 20 people. I think we are at 22 staff, plus families moved. A couple more are coming in the next few months. So it's a very tough decision, and I'm very thankful that essentially all the key folks moved over. They took the plunge of going from one side of Europe to the other. But it's a very taxing. It turns out, picking up everything and leaving is much harder than it sounds.
Of multiple families and a business, and
yeah. But luckily, at the start of this year, all of that structurally is all good. We know how to do these relocations. Portugal has a lot of positives for being in tech, and especially getting residents, European residents, all that stuff. That's actually it's straightforward. It's not that it's fast, but it's like it works. So everyone at this point is a resident.
Wow,
and
that's fast.
That's so good. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot. Like you mentioned that folks are still coming at this time, even almost 2 years later.
So not necessarily. So what we did is, like, the rule was, like, we have to stop all our operations in Russia and Belarus. So if folks were able to go somewhere else, they did. So we also have presence in Armenia and Georgia, which are much like, you could just go there. But what happens? Well, what's going to happen in those geos, whatever. So we have folks that are in those areas, or just joining the company, and we're moving them to Portugal to kind of work out of our physical office.
Okay, wow. So yeah, like you mentioned a little bit, all your operations have to stop. So like all the games that you were working on, all the projects you were working on, pretty much had to be on pause while you figured out this logistical challenge of moving.
Right. Well, look, we can't. You don't put them on pause, but we had a plan in the next X months. We had to just. I think it's like you have to stop sending. You have to stop having contracts with folks in those regions, and you have to stop sending money there, because at some point you weren't able to send money there anyway. Mm-hmm. And we also, unfortunately, it's impossible now to, like, if you have an app in those regions, they just don't work. Like, ads don't make any money, and there's no, and payment systems are really limited. I mean, we'll see what happens as there's more and more conflicts in the world. Global politics are changing about what's okay and what's not. Mm-hmm. I think me as a CEO, I just want everyone to play the game. I don't care about your political leanings. I'm sure that of course we don't want to sponsor any bad guys or whatever, but I feel like that's a separate topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Like, as a CEO, you're here to make games, take care of your folks. These global politics and challenges and events are just things that happen, and we have to figure out ways to navigate around that. How was the transition from Russia to Portugal? Because, like you said, it's the other side of Europe. I can't imagine. It's culturally, like, the food and the time of day. Like, how was that?
That's right. No, I think there's kind of there's two things. Like, the pace overall in Southwestern Europe is all, like, it's just slower. Everything's slower. And I don't know. On one hand, I'm thinking, wow, like, don't slow down. Why would we need to slow down? So we would be worse off. So, but I think that's everyone's natural thing, is just keep the mindset that you have. And we're sort of there, but in some places it makes sense to slow down. Like, where are you running to? Weather here is nice. That's a big positive. Yeah, it's really enjoy the mornings here. But yeah, it's like I think I'm leaning more towards the don't slow down, stay at your pace, stay. I mean, still late, whatever, but there's no reason to slow yourself down if it's going to hurt you just to fit in or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's funny because for me that brings to the mind the East versus West, where even in North America, like the Eastern side is like very go go go, like city life, do something, always be busy. And then the West Coast, and even more so, like on the island, on Vancouver Island, everyone's like super chill, no rush, take it easy, go for a walk in the forest. Like, so maybe it's an East and West thing. I don't know.
We'll see. I don't know. I can't slow down. I'll and anyway, I'm from the East Coast, right? So
Oh yeah.
maybe that's just naturally. I mean, there's another guy here, another CEO, and he mentioned like, dude, you just need your heart rate to be at a certain level, and like that heart rate, the average heart rate here is at a different level.
Oh,
that's a good analogy.
Cool. I like it. I'm a bit of a busybody myself too. I really like to be productive, but
Yes.
I can also see the appeal of slowing down and all that. Were there any games that helped with this transition? Like what was out and how did that play a role
I think
into this?
Yeah, this is a good point. I mean, what I wanted to say on this is like the fact that there are so many multiplayer, easily accessible games. I think that helps with having, because we have like 20 something people here and we have another 30 all around Europe. So how do you like, you still have to have some kind of company culture. So we're trying to do, I think we've started with these like trivia games. It's like you can't play you can't place 4-on-4 with 30 people with 50 people, right? So these trivia games have been really interesting. I think I don't remember the names, but it's not like you don't know Jack. It's like just these other ones. You find them on web, and those are casual games actually. So but what I want to do is so there's a game called Lethal Company, right? That's been making the waves on Steam. That's really funny to play remotely. And there's mods that you can put like 30 plus people in rooms. I want to try to do that with like company wide.
Cool. Wow.
So,
okay.
But what hasn't worked is like the freaking console hooked up to a TV in the office. I think no, it doesn't work. So
everyone's remote. They need their own setup. Like
not everyone's a hardcore gamer. Yeah. But not everyone's a hardcore gamer. And trivia games, they're legit games. They're multi-million-dollar games out there that are just trivia. Yeah. So it really works. And then board games like Apples to Apples and stuff like that.
Yeah, that works through a web browser.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could do all that, but that's actually another difficulty thing is like if you build your company kind of workflow completely remote, so you're using Jira and Google Meet and all that, Miro. So how are you that means all your shit has to be online basically. So you always have to find like big lobby games. And not everyone can play Roblox or Real Company, but some of those games are fun to watch.
Oh, okay. Has that been like a weekly thing for you at Original Games, or
we're trying to move to these kind of self-hosted, so things like Lethal Company. We're starting to figure it out. So I mean, one of the things that I did, I pushed through, I got a budget for, is we do like one happy hour a month where internal folks, cool. Which is a social time where we can play board games. And then we have kind of, we open it up to the community where it's a happy hour, we sponsor it, come into our office, hang out. Cool. Been doing that, 50, 60 people show up. So that's pretty fun.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. That's, building company culture, I think is really important. It makes the place feel welcoming to work at. And for the community, it makes them feel like, oh, this is a company that cares about not just making a product and making money. It cares about the people and building something social around that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I still have to try Lethal Company. There's something about it that doesn't hook me, but it's got all the things I like. Multiplayer, it's spooky, it's got funny mods. We gotta try it.
We gotta get that gotta get it set up. It's interesting what happens if there's way more people than it's designed to handle. Maybe it won't work. Let's see.
Yeah. That's awesome. what's the plan for the future of original games moving forward? Is it still just keep chugging along, making the merge games, or is there grander
So
projects
I
you're
think
thinking of?
it's as a founder, it's like one of the biggest questions, and it unfortunately, when the company gets big enough, it's more about how do you structure your P&L going forward. Do we try to release more products to increase our top line? Do we kind of make the existing games more profitable? And I'm more about, I think I want to kind of head down, just improve KPIs on these mobile games instead of releasing new stuff. Because because releasing new it's just short-term profit. Like it doesn't like, yes, more money is good, but long term we need to build out a better product. And I think just the reason I'm struggling is because it's actually pretty boring to improve an existing product. It's way more fun to release new stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're going to take another plunge and just go full on live ops, kind of improving game KPIs all around. We had the last 2 months were really interesting. We had big wins on during the holidays, so definitely going to pursue that.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I also work in some startups, and I forget who said it, but someone was like, "Oh, coming up with ideas and names is the fun part, and then the hard part's actually making money off of it."
I mean, it's like some of this stuff is just setting up processes, and like you said, like coming up with names. Well, it's like if you have one name, like check size, that can hit different things in different departments. And it's like, okay, now we need to come up with a new name. So you would have a meeting where it's like all the heads of the departments are there, just coming up with some vocabulary where the company can use internally. It's just funny, but you have to. Otherwise, you have a report that has different KPIs with the same name, all this stuff, and that's not that interesting. Try to make it interesting, but that's when you get a certain size, that becomes kind of day to day. It's just incremental improvements that will eventually yield a longer tail and hopefully more profit.
Yeah, it's the game of capitalism.
Yeah, welcome.
How to do that. That's awesome. Do you have any final thoughts about moving from Russia to Portugal and transitioning a team from here to there?
Yeah, I think it's like the way I'm usually, so again, my method of decision making is very structured, and like the human ethical element is usually like not in the top. But in this case, I mean, because it's more about long-term value for the company and all that. But in this case, we made specific kind of steps to help the transition for people moving over. So, things like airfare, providing them not a hotel, but providing like an apartment, this kind of stuff. So, I color my hair. Usually I'm all gray. So, I was going to say, I got a little bit more grayer. So it took a lot of effort to do that. But, those kinds of transitions, you really need to put kind of mental health first. Then think about it from a legal point of view, because sometimes when you get a lawyer involved, that'll just add, 3 weeks to any decision. And then kind of financial should be maybe on the third side within reason. So I think it's that, think about the people in this case, right? Because you need them to function properly. And then I think the other thing to think about is you have to understand your unknowns. Like any plan should any comparison table should also include like, well, what is this unknown? Like, what are these things that we don't know that we need to be prepared for and maybe act on them, as soon as we can.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it's a careful balance between the human side and taking care of their mental health, but you also do that by making sure that on your end you have all the logistics figured out, like where they're moving to, airfare, like what about lawyers, and you taking care of all of that does help the human side and help their mental health, because a lot of your folks, I'm sure, are developers and artists. They might not have those skills that you can provide for them. Yeah.
Right. And, it would be very kind of quick for them to start learning that kind of stuff. So maybe we should take care of it. But it's tough to, it's financially tough. And sometimes there's a lot of legal questions that need answering properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like original games definitely helped with all that during a great time of conflict, and it's still going on.
Yeah,
for sure.
still going. Yeah, unfortunately.
As we close out this episode, I always like to ask a couple of fun questions for our guests. The first one, since you are kind of someone who does get budgets and money to make games for a company, but for yourself, if I wanted to invest in a game for you, let's say this podcast blows up and I make $1 billion, and I want to make a game that represents your life, you get to choose everything about it, from genre to graphics to gameplay. What kind of game would it be?
Yeah, and this is an easy one for me. So there's a game called Gone Home from Fulbright that I think would just be that game. And it's just you walk around an old house in the 90s. The graphics look like Quake 2. But it tells a really interesting emotional story through this completely like outdated mechanic. I would love to work on games like that, and I don't think they make any money. But sometimes you have success. So Fulbright's coming out with, I think it's called Open Road in February, and then it's like so exciting. Like I'm going to take off the whole month.
Oh wow!
Probably not. No, it's going to be it's going to be a weekend. But anyway, so I would love to do games like that. I just don't understand how their economics work, and that's why I'm completely confident saying that I would love to do exploration games that make no money.
Yeah.
But tell a cool story.
That's a great answer, because I'm financing everything. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Good.
But yeah, I just thought it was cool because you had to bring your CEO side into this. Like, how do we make money off of this to make it economically viable? But yeah, so you would make a game about, or not about, going home. I actually never played Gone Home. I should, but an adventure game. That's story.
No spoilers yet. I mean, I like games that use outdated technology to tell the story in a clever way. Okay. And it's not that, Gone Home I think was made in Unity, and it's like totally performance-wise it's terrible and everything, but it looks like a game that you'd put, load off the CD-ROM, on Windows 95.
Mm-hmm. Okay, like the art style is older.
Yeah. It's just like kind of low poly, like kind of old school lighting techniques and things like that. But yeah, I'd love to do those.
Oh, well, what would be your preferred era of art style, I guess?
That's a good question. So I mean, there's so much you can do when you're limited. So if you look at games that were made before Photoshop, like that had a limited color palette, there's so much more you could do with 2D graphics. I mean, not more, but like the creativity of having that limitation, I love that. And again, like I love those 16-bit games. The thing is that they just make no money. Like if you have a 3D game, you make a little bit more money. And you need to make money because it allows you to have, bigger staff, or you spend less time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but or like this, I like low poly, not low poly. Like, I mean, when you're how many triangles you can have on the screen is not like unlimited.
Yeah.
I like when it's low, so you have to be really creative on how you tell everything. I love that.
Right.
And if it still looks amazing,
it's like creativity comes from restraint and limitations. Yeah.
I think it's cool to put limitations on and then still tell an interesting story. I mean, or just still tell any story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a great challenge. I hope that somebody finances your.
Well, I mean, once one of these days we gotta have an exit or whatever, then I'll be sitting somewhere in the Sierra Nevada mountains making games out of a cabin.
Yes,
in my 70s.
Looking forward to that. Yeah. We'll be like, oh, you didn't know Arseny made this? Yeah. Cool. I think that's going to be a great game. Can't wait for that. And my second question I like to ask all the guests is, what is your one piece of wisdom to leave with the world?
So that's a good question, and I'm humbled because I don't believe that I'm wise enough to leave that, but I do have one that I'd like to tell everyone. And then, so it's like this, everything in our world is made by another person who's no worse than you. So anytime you think you're not good enough for something, whatever you're not good enough for was also made by another person just like you. Whether that's, the first printed book, to an invention of some deity, to, you know, some understanding of your sexuality, whatever it is, man. Somebody else made that up.
Mm-hmm.
That's always good to remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like we're all just people in the end. We're all just people making stuff and being creative.
That's right.
I like that. Cool. Well, Arseny, thank you so much for joining me. I think this episode has been really cool to talk to somebody that is not just a game developer, but also someone on the business side and has to know where the next paycheck comes from. And thank you for sharing your experience with having to move your whole company. That is definitely something that is not common in our world of games. So yeah, I really appreciate your time and thanks for coming on to the show. Well, audience, thanks for checking our episode out. Please leave a comment on whenever you are listening on, whether it's YouTube or X or Spotify. I think you can leave comments now. Let me know what you thought of the episode. I always want to make these shows better for everyone. Before we go, I'd like to plug our socials once again. Check out @GrowUpLevelUp on YouTube and podcasts, and check out some of our other episodes, including the one with Brian O'Callahan, who's the executive director of New York Video Games Chronicle, where he helps write video game reviews and lets youth write them as well. And check out our other shows, Ugulu and Cheers Love. Follow me at SamsonXP on all the socials. And Arseny, where can people find you?
I think the easiest one is just on LinkedIn, and I have a weird name, so probably the only one. And then I'm usually at Arseny on most social media.
That's awesome. That's a great catch on all the handles, getting your name.
Well, if you're old enough to have a first account on Facebook, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm usually really responsive on LinkedIn. If you send me spam, I usually love to troll you until you realize that there's no opportunity here.
Perfect. So if you want to get into contact with Arseny, do it through LinkedIn, unless it's spam. Oh, actually, if it's spam, he might still respond to you.
Yeah, I'll respond. Come at me.
Yeah. And a quick shout out to Mike Gallagher and Untitled Ad Lab, who actually connected us. If you are looking for someone to do the marketing for your team and content creation, definitely contact Mike at Untitled Ad Lab. And the links will all be in the description below, as well as Arseny's studio and games, if you want to check those out as well. Awesome. Arseny, thank you so much for joining us again. Talk to you later, everybody.
Bye-bye.